strong believers in the accessibility of gaming. We want to take as much of the black market as possible and bring it into the light so it can be further regulated, and that includes mobile and web-based gaming. But we also want to do our best to bring new physical experiences to new unique locations like the Future Sportsbook operated by William Hill at Capital One Arena.
Hopefully, the way that people view esports will change a little bit. I think it's going to give it a lot more openings, as you already pointed out, with Las Vegas, hopefully New Jersey. There's the one thing I found interesting from the U.S. perspective is that they were, prohibiting some of the table tennis sports. On the esports side, just all the different leagues that we had and having so many more eyes on it, it actually improved the integrity side of it for us and our ability to manage that better and put in more models and, different things in place to help us be much stronger on the integrity side for esports. So moving forward, that will be hugely helpful for us.
I actually had high hopes for virtual sports because you're right. In the U.S., it really hasn't taken off yet. And I think that's probably a lot of reasons for that. I know our Betfred UK does a fair amount of business on virtual sports, especially virtual racing. I think for here, because it's all state by state from a regulatory perspective. Most state regulators still consider it machine gaming. So allowing like a sports book to offer virtual sports or virtual racing is just not. It's not in the regulations right now, and it wasn't something they were willing to sort of like jump on really fast. So while I think it was a prime opportunity for virtual sports if ever to be in the U.S. and be successful in the U.S., it just wasn't possible from a regulatory standpoint. So we continue to sort of wait for that to happen.
Already again as a casino product rather than a sportsbook product. So it's been, I think everybody would agree that virtuals over here in the U.S. would have probably done pretty well if they'd been adapted and kind of live here a little earlier. But neither here nor there, because we're going to have real sport back here soon.
Having the leagues on board and sharing data and information that they have, as well as the operators on board and sharing data and information they have, and then the regulators having access to better information and more data than they've ever had, with the ability to do their own investigations, as well as consult people like George's team or my team.
I think in the U.S., a lot of what's going on in integrity issues revolves more around insider information. Whether someone's injured, whether someone's going to be suspended, and that information being leaked out intentionally or unintentionally.
When there is an integrity case like that, often when it comes to sanctioning somebody, it's not the match fixer that gets the bears the brunt, it's the player. So it's often the kid who suffers, the match fixer walks away with his money, and the person who suffers, it's the sporting participant, the college player. And they're the ones that need to be aware of that.
One common factor of all complaints or opinions which was related to trust, and this is bad placement process. That bad placement process on the sportsbook platforms are not transparent. The same issue with the trust was confirmed by the stakeholders. So even stakeholders from Parimatch, Sportbetten or CIS mentioned that if we want to attract a new esports millennials or Gen Z, we need to solve the problem with the transparency.
Well, there's no universal definition of responsible. What's responsible to me and what's a large bet for me may not be a large bet for someone else, and vice versa. So it's an ambiguous term, and it really comes down to just finger in the air test of, is this what we should be doing, is what we should not be doing? I think Adam brought up a great point is, I think everyone's intent, especially on this panel, given that we compete in only white markets, specifically in the US and in Europe as well, we're all, for the most part, doing the right things.
In the early years after New Jersey regulated online gambling, they had a number of affiliates trying to be both offshore and licensed, and they clamped down on it at some point and basically said, you've got 150 days to stop promoting offshore or you're locked out permanently from the US, or from New Jersey at least. I think, it's one of the issues with every state being like its own country that we have to deal with going through this invention of the rules process in every new state that comes up. but there is a lot of incentive to avoid promoting offshore, doing other things you shouldn't if you want to be a licensed affiliate in this new pie that is growing here in the US, which is legal sports betting and to a lesser extent gaming and online poker and things like that.
In my view, it's a critical component of the long-term sustainability of any gambling market. And I suppose the biggest advantage the US market, or in this case the individual markets on a state-by-state basis, potentially have is that they could get in there early, so to speak. Because some of them, or most of them, have regulated only recently. Other states are currently in the throes of regulating. So they're at the very beginning of that process. This is still a novelty, which on the one hand means that everybody has a lot to learn. On the other hand, you would like to think that as part of that learning curve or education process, there would be at least some room for responsible gambling or problem gambling related education.
What worried me at the time early on was that there just doesn't seem to be any recognition of the harms that may come with this, and that's worrying, because if America and the States don't get a handle of that on early and educate people, allow people to make informed decisions, provide really good training to the gambling operators themselves, you will ultimately go along the same lines as the UK did and Europe did, and then regulation will come in, it will become vice-like, and then you go into the sort of illegal black market operators, etc.
I was just going to say, I think it's also important to consider pathways and opportunities that don't involve gamblers actually recognizing problems in themselves. And this might speak to what Paul was saying, that put a little bit more of the onus on the providers, on the gaming providers, on identifying products or tools that kind of operate independently, that still allow the games to be fun and entertaining for people, but at the same time help prevent problems from developing or growing.
With the use of health and safety measures and being visible, this can be a brand differentiator. 88% of the people that we surveyed said that the actions that individual casinos or individual casino brands can take will help protect, to help protect their health, will determine which specific properties they want to visit and patronize. And 2/3 of the people that we talked to, if you ask them on our Likert scale of not very important to very important, 2/3 of people said that it was very important to them to be able to see this, and that's how they were going to determine which properties they want to visit.
On information protection and information security, a lot more information being exchanged electronically, including between constituents and government, an area that I focus a lot on, and the need for government to really accelerate its automation activities in terms of its interactions with its citizens.
Nearly 60% of respondents indicated that COVID-19 has made cash a less attractive payment option for them. Nearly 70% say they expect to use contactless payments more frequently over the course of the next year. When we asked about their interest in using digital payment methods at casinos, 54% indicate they would be very likely to utilize a digital or contactless payment option when they gamble, and 57% said it would be important for them to have that option due to the pandemic.
When I'm dealing with regulators on these types of payments issues, there is a lot of focus on issues of privacy and security, of course, but there are also, I've seen a lot of focus on issues such as data sharing. With whom will the data be shared aside from the casino operator? Will the payment provider have the right to use the data in any way is a question that comes up at times. And also issues around identity verification, money laundering, and things of that nature, other types of regulatory concerns, which really in an electronic payments setting are more easily addressed. Nonetheless, because they're new to gaming regulators, sometimes requires some explanation and description.
So one of the problems that translating the Nevada model to other states, there's two reasons I see. Number one, the technology's lagged way, way behind. And number two is maybe that isn't the model that is worth growing. People making 10-dime bets at 11 to 10. Maybe the model really is a lot of small people making small bets into non-competitive lines and making micro bets throughout an entire game or throughout a golf tournament for small money at odds that are maybe with a 10% hold. Maybe that's the model that people want.